Welcome to another episode of Balancing Acts, the show dedicated to business owners who are working hard every day, constantly balancing priorities for their time and their money, and all while trying to keep a decent family life and personal life. Today, we're going to speak with author Sam Bennett. She's the author of Get It Done, Start Right Where You Are, and most recently, the 15-minute method, surprisingly simple art of getting it done. I absolutely adore the title. Sam is a writer, speaker, actor, creativity, productivity specialist, and the founder of therealsambennett.com, which is committed to helping overwhelmed creatives and frustrated overachievers get unstuck. She's also the instructor of a very popular LinkedIn learning class, which is how I found Sam years ago, with over 1 million class participants worldwide. Thank you so much for being with us today, Sam.
It's my pleasure, Linda. Thank you so much. Hi, everybody.
And so we're going to talk about your book, about your business, some of the concepts. As I said, I've already earmarked my book and got lots of tags in it. It's full of gems. What inspired you to write the 15-minute method?
Well, I've been beating a drum about 15 minutes for a long time. And more as people were coming to me with a couple of words I kept hearing over and over again: overwhelm, procrastination, perfectionism. And I thought, we got to put a stop to this. This is just hurting everyone's creativity. It's hurting everyone's productivity. And it's not that hard of a problem to solve.
And those words have occasionally come out of my mouth too. So can we really get things done in 15 minutes? What are some examples of that?
It's astonishing how much you can get done in 15 minutes. I hear from people every single day of the things they can accomplish. And even, we were talking about writing a book earlier. If you sat down to write for 15 minutes a day, you can put out about 250 words if you don't edit yourself too much. Well, in 400 days, that's 50,000 words. That's a book.
No, that makes sense.
Right. And you can ask yourself, where was I 400 days ago? And what would it mean to me to have a manuscript today?
And so that was one of the things you talked about in the very beginning of your book was, what if you were working on something that is for yourself, that matters to you? How often in our lives, in our business, families, clients, employees, are we doing things for others and pushing the things we want to the side?
Exactly. And that's really the heart of the book. I mean, yes, I want you to get your professional goals done. Yes, I want you to have your business succeed. Yeah, yes to all of that. But what I really want is for you to spend 15 minutes a day on something that matters to you. And I don't care if it matters to anyone else. I want it to matter to you because, as you say, we get everything done for everybody else all day long. And the thing that you know would really make a difference to your heart, to your spirit, to your body, somehow doesn't even make it onto the list.
Yeah. Or that to-do list, which is like 50 items on it. I heard recently of a to-do list, which meant these are things that are already done. So that was interesting.
And yeah, I love a to-do list. I also love, in Get It Done, actually, I talk about turning your to-do list into a could-do list. Partly because to-do, it feels like a lot of pressure. But also, it allows me to put things on there that I might not, in fact, do, but it's interesting to think about. I used to live not very far from where Oprah lives in Montecito in California. And I thought, well, yeah, I mean, I could drive over to Oprah's house and, throw a copy of the book over the wall. Now, am I going to do that? No, of course not. But it does remind me that there's a very wealthy community called Montecito right next door, and maybe their bookstore would like to have me in for a signing. Or, right? So sometimes writing down things that you could do, will never do. I could quit this job and move to Belize. What does that tell me? What's in there for me? Oh, maybe I could just put on some music and dance for 15 minutes and feel like I've moved to a tropical location. Maybe I could eat something new for dinner tonight to spice up my life. You know you better than I do. But I find that we often don't do things because we're waiting to make some big move, when in fact our life is always made up of little moves.
Yeah. And that kind of leads me to, thinking about overwhelm. You say in the book that most of us see overwhelm as an outside problem, but you say it's an inside problem. Could you tell us a little bit about what you mean by that?
Yeah, it's easy to blame out there, right? I'm overwhelmed because of everything that's happening, everything that's coming at me at such and I think it sort of has to do with feeling like everything's coming at you at sort of the equal level of intensity. So it's very difficult to prioritize. But what I want to point out to you is that it is, yes, not an outside problem. And I can prove it to you because when we look at people who have jobs at which they are chronically overwhelmed, people who work in emergency rooms, people who are first responders. I was on the news the other day doing a little segment, and the newscaster said, oh, she said, like when we're reporting on a story and it's like tragic or it's breaking news and things are unfolding really fast, or it's, something hard to talk about. I'm like, right, exactly. That is an overwhelming situation, but she herself is not overwhelmed. She's a newscaster. She's just doing her job. The people who work in the emergency room are not overwhelmed, right? They are calm. They're doing their thing. They're taking the information. They're handling it. They're calm as can be. They often have a great sense of humor even, right? So it's not what's going on out there. It's what's going on in here.
How do you change that? What do you do about feeling overwhelmed?
Yeah, the great news is that because it's in here, you have 100% control over it. So, and let me put a little asterisk by this. If some of your overwhelm is coming from depression, anxiety, or other mental health struggles, please get some help with that. Speaking as someone who has lived with depression and anxiety her entire life, sometimes it is not just improve your positive mental attitude question, right? So I just want to acknowledge that. But a lot of times it is a positive mental attitude. So one of the things I recommend is, again, spend this 15 minutes on something that matters to you, because now you've filled your cup up a little bit. Mm-hmm. And everything that felt like so much pressure an hour ago now feels a little more manageable.
Oh, that's a great insight. Thank you for sharing that. I think I'm going to remind myself of that. Well, when I say I have big to-do lists, I'm a CPA by profession. I have massive lists, and I even have a someday maybe list. So if you don't know where to begin because everything is calling at the same time, where might you start?
I would start with something that has to do with your zone of creative genius. So first of all, tip of the hat to Gay Hendricks and his work on zones of genius. Everyone has a zone of genius. Most people have multiple zones of genius. I work with highly creative people who have multiple zones of creative genius. They're good at a lot of things. And yours may have escaped you just because it comes so naturally to you, you don't always notice that it's a thing. So I want you to look at things you've always been naturally good at, naturally interested in, passions that no one in your family shares, in fact, they all may look at you like, really? You're spending money on that? You're doing what? You're going where? You want to go to what exhibit? What? The things that everybody else is a little like this. And you're like, oh no, I'm so interested. The other way I sometimes think of it is if someone were to wake you up in the middle of the night and say, hey, we're going to go XYZ, do you want to come? And you'd be like, yeah, where are my shoes? I'm coming, right? What is that thing? So whatever that is for you, spend 15 minutes on that or something that has to do with that.
I love it. We're going to take a commercial break, and then we're going to come back and talk to Sam more about how you can apply the 15-minute method in your business. Welcome back to Balancing Acts. We're talking with Sam Bennett about her new book, The 15-Minute Method, and the surprisingly simple art of getting things done. Sam, business owners and entrepreneurs are often addicted to what I call the shiny object syndrome. how can 15-minute method help you when you have a ton of ideas and you just can't pick?
Yeah, well, it can help you start by making you pick. Right? Get out of this there's a certain narcotic quality to busyness, right? And to, oh, this thing and that thing and this thing and that thing and this thing and that thing. And the fact is, when you have your own business, the number of things that you need to do every day is incalculable. The things that should have been done yesterday, the things that should have been done 3 weeks ago, the things that should have been done 3 years ago. I mean, you can't win. So I want you to take at least 15 minutes a day to focus in and really remember what your priority is. Not priorities, priority. What is the one thing that if you do it will move the needle on everything else? So is it reaching out to a former client to see what possibilities are still there? Is it getting your work out into the media more by being on Linda's podcast? Is it, what is it going to be for you? And this may even appear to contradict what I just said, the other beautiful thing about the 15-minute method is try a bunch of things. Try one thing for a week, try another thing for a week. You turn out you don't like it, fine. It was only 15 minutes. Do something else. Allow yourself a little bit of a testing ground. I think sometimes we don't move forward on things because we sort of feel like, oh, but what if I get all the way into it and I don't like it? It's like, well, don't get all the way into it. Do it 15 minutes at a time and see how it feels.
Yeah, and that leads me to think about, perfectionism, which you do talk about, and like, how do you defeat perfectionism? Because some of those shiny objects, we have all these ideas, and then we either don't do any of them, or we bring them back to our teams, and they look at you like, "Are you nuts? You expect us to implement all these things today?" Well, no, that wasn't quite what I meant. But so, how do you defeat perfectionism?
Yeah, perfectionism. I think part of it is, I want you to have all of us here to have a hard moment with ourselves, have a good, honest, firm conversation with ourselves around the ego involved in perfectionism. Because if perfectionism actually worked, I would be all in favor of it. If you could work it out inside of your mind and make every little detail perfect and then have it come out perfect, I'd be like, wow, that's great. Go ahead, do that. That's a good strategy. But I don't notice that it works that way. What I notice is that people stay attached to this idea inside of their head, inside of this hermetically sealed box right here, where it's not doing anybody any good. So what could be more interesting than perfect? What if your idea was wild? What if your idea was sexy? What if your idea was reliable, rock solid? What if your idea, something else? This whole idea of like, well, if it's not perfect, I can't possibly be bothered to do it. It's like, what? Really? Do you love the people in your life because they're perfect people? Do you love the books or movies that you love because they're perfect? I don't think so. And this pressure that you're putting on yourself, that somehow it's all got to be perfect, you have to know everything, you have to be the ultimate expert on everything. Like, I think there's moments in our lives, particularly as entrepreneurs, where we just have to be really good parents to ourselves and to sit ourselves down and go, sweetheart, it's okay. Like, let's drop this perfect thing and maybe, like I said, think of something more interesting.
Right. And I think sometimes my perfectionism is not necessarily that I will have a perfect idea, but more about, I'm worried it's not good enough. And so I won't let it go, and I won't let it go, and I won't let it go because it's not good enough yet.
Right.
And I just lose a lot of time that way.
Well, and what I want to say is it's entirely possible that it's not good enough. How are we going to know? Right? So again, we take baby steps. We do 15 minutes a day. Maybe in this 15-minute thing, I'm going to run it past a few people and get their input. Some people that I love and respect and who I know love and respect me. I'm not going to show it to everybody. I'm not going to show it to the people whose judgment I don't trust. But there's a couple of, I got a couple people on my board of advisors that, I do it all the time. I'm like, all right, take a look at this. Tell me what you think about this, right? It is also possible, and I've had this happen so many times, where I put something out into the world and I'm thinking, it's not right, it's not ready, this isn't going to be good, I'm going to get laughed at, and everybody goes crazy for it. So maybe you're not the best judge of your own work. In fact, maybe it's not even your job to judge your work.
Very interesting. I think really insightful too. So you talk about a couple of concepts I've not actually thought about before. The alchemy of effort. What is that and how does it work? I just love the expression.
Yes. Well, I think it's maybe let's see, what's a good way to describe it? Okay, so we talked about that idea that's hermetically sealed inside of your brain, right? But when you get it out onto paper, it changes, right? It's different on paper than it was inside of your mind. And now your relationship with it is different. And let's say you take that idea that you've put on paper and you put it out into the world. Well, it changes again once it hits the air, and then somebody interacts with it. And they're changed, and it's changed, and then you're changed because you didn't know they were going to have that reaction to it. And now we start to have this sort of infinity loop, this kind of Moebius strip of I do a thing and it has a result and it has an impact on you, which has a return, has an impact on me. And we get this beautiful dance going, this beautiful energetic dance that doesn't always go the way we think it's going to go. It doesn't always work the way we planned for it to work. And in some ways, that's even more delightful, right? To watch the ripple effects of the things that you do. And it does feel alchemical. It does feel like it's turning lead into gold, doesn't it?
Yes. Yes. So I've taken many personality and behavioral assessments over the years. I'm always trying to improve how I show up for myself, my team, my clients. But, again, perfectionism might go in there. Self-awareness is important, but we all have weaknesses. And you have a section that you talk about how turning weaknesses into strengths in your book. What could you say about that?
Oh, thank you for bringing that up. I love that you saw that part. Turning weaknesses into strengths is something I first started to see when I was working as an actor. I spent a long time, most of my adult life, working as an actor on stage and television. And particularly my first husband was a wonderful director. He's still a wonderful director. And he would sometimes you come across an actor who can't dance, can't sing, can't do XYZ. And so he would choreograph a number in which the person who can't dance either doesn't dance at all, stands there not dancing with everybody else dancing around them, or takes their crazy non-dancing and makes it into something great, right? There's a famous story about the musical A Little Night Music. It's a beautiful, beautiful show. And the person who originated the role of Desiree was an actress named Glynis Johns, who had a very narrow range. And they decided she needed a song, but she didn't have one of those big belty voices, the sun will come out tomorrow kinds of voices. So, and she also didn't have a ton of breath control. I mean, she had breath control, but she couldn't do long phrases either. So now she doesn't have this big range and she can't do these long phrases. So what we think of as the big star turn in the musical, she can't really do. So they write Send in the Clowns for her.
Yeah.
Which just, isn't it rich? Aren't we? I probably shouldn't do it because we'll run into rights issues. But anyway, go play the song Send in the Clowns and you'll see it has a very narrow range. The phrases are very short and it is the most lovely, romantic, rueful, heartbreaking song. They took everything she couldn't do and made it into
wow,
a perfect gem.
Wow. So we're going to take a break in a moment, but I would say one thing that I think of when I look at weaknesses and all the, now discover your strengths is sometimes business owners, maybe if they're not, in an acting business or something, they might have to shore up their weaknesses until they improve them, whether they hire someone or not. And I think let's talk about that some more when we come back from the commercial break. Welcome back. We're talking to Sam Bennett about balancing acts and all the things you might do to balance your work and your life and have joy. In our last segment, we were talking about weaknesses. So I just wanted to follow up and expand a moment for business owners. They might not have a producer. They might not have someone to help them. What can they do about some of their weaknesses to either strengthen them or to get others around them to help?
Yeah. Well, to think of it just from a personality standpoint, I think one of the things you can look towards is what are the things you've been criticized for, that you got in trouble for in school, that maybe your parents sort of disapproved of, or that you even think to yourself, oh, I'm too XYZ. I'm too pushy. I'm too sarcastic. I'm too sensitive. I'm too dreamy. I'm too talkative, right? All of those things that you were told you were too, take off the two, right? You're not too talkative. You're just talkative. You're not too friendly. You're just friendly, right? You're not too sarcastic. You're just sarcastic. And those things that you naturally are, we were talking about your zone of genius earlier, these things that you have always been this way, you were like this in kindergarten, you'll be like this 20 years from now. That lean into that. If you were too talkative, have a shot, start a podcast, right? It was, I was told over and over again, like, oh, Samantha, you're so sensitive. You're too sensitive. You're too sensitive. I'm not too sensitive. I'm just sensitive. I might have been too sensitive for the third grade. I might have been too sensitive for some other less sensitive members of my family, but I'm not too sensitive for the planet. I'm just sensitive. And now I have a job where I get to be professionally sensitive. Right? I get to take all the things that I respond to and put them into books and put them into shows and put them into my own life. So all those things that you got criticized for, how can you lean into that more? How can you make that a policy? Right?
Yeah.
I have a policy around friendliness. I have a policy around loyalty. I have a policy around generosity.
That's really a great piece of advice there, because I know many feel that way. So you mentioned again, I know I've read Gay Hendricks' books as well, the Genius Zone, but you talked about a zone of creative genius. And you know what it meant to me? I have a son who went to film school, and I'm a CPA. Okay. You don't always think of your CPA as creative. So I'm always saying, I'm not creative. And you said in the book, there's a difference between artistic and creative. That resonated with me so much. What could you say about that difference for our audience who's listening?
I want to underline this so much for people because it makes me kind of nuts. There has been a collapsement, right? This conflation, if that's the right word, of artistic and creative. And they're two very different things. Everyone is creative. Creativity has to do with innovative problem solving. CPAs are some of the most innovative people I know, right? If you've ever solved the problem differently than anybody else has ever solved the problem, congratulations, you are a creative genius, right? So your zones of creativity and your zones of creative genius may have to do with engineering, may have to do with biomarkers, may have to do with horticulture. I don't know, it has to do with the way you look at the world and the way your brain functions. That's creative. Artistic is having a skill or talent in the arts. Some people are artistic, some people are not artistic. It's, not the same thing. And I can't tell you how many, even myself, when I first started my business, it was called the Organized Artist Company. And I thought, well, can I really call myself an artist? Now, I've been an actor since I was 3. But even I had it in my head of like, well, it's not like I paint, like art is somehow only visual art. It's like, no, there's all kinds of ways to be an artist. And I think oftentimes when people get to the very top of their field, we start to refer to them as artists, right? That person's not just an accountant, they're an artist, right? That person's not just a marketing director, they're an artist. Like their ability to take diverse ideas and make them into one thing or find new ways to solve problems is beyond,
There is an art and a science to accounting and tax strategies. That is true.
Exactly right. And of course, I'll make the joke that everybody's making in the home. We don't want to get too creative.
There you go. When it comes to our tax and accounting, yes, it's supposed to be actual, not and factual, as opposed to art. What is the spotlight syndrome you talk about in your book, and maybe some ways to counteract the spotlight syndrome?
Yeah, I think, we're again going back to this idea of overwhelm. Sometimes I think some of the things that keeps us playing small, that keeps us from trying new things or getting our work out there in a bigger way, has to do with visibility issues. And every culture has a phrase about, the tall poppy gets cut down and the nail that stands up will be hammered, and, don't think you're so special. Don't you get too big for your britches, right? Spotlight syndrome is takes that and amplifies it. It's when you do something, you maybe make a gaffe or stumble your words a little bit, and you think, "Oh no, I'm ruined. Everyone will think I'm an idiot. Oh, this is terrible. Everyone noticed." You know what? They didn't. They didn't. And if they did notice, they probably didn't think anything about it. Why? Because they're too busy worrying about their own spotlight syndrome. We're so busy monitoring our own behavior that we think everybody is noticing as much as we're noticing. And frankly, they're not.
It's kind of the perfect us, right? We're embarrassed about something that we shouldn't, no one else is noticing, but we're self-critical.
Right. And again, can you even turn it into a plus?
Yeah.
Can you turn it into an advantage? Or even just be able to pre-announce, to come to the meeting and say, look, sometimes I get excited and I start to talk too fast and then I'll stumble my words. So if that happens, let's wave at me and we'll all take a breath and slow down. Sometimes I get a lot of ideas and I get a little overly friendly and overly excited about them. If that's, you can pre-announce these things. So if it does happen, it's nothing to be embarrassed about. You've already told them that it's going to happen, right?
Yeah, you remind me why I loved taking your LinkedIn course. I love you as both a writer and an instructor. Yet another phrase in the book, grumpy magic, which really tickled me too. So what is grumpy magic?
Yeah, grumpy magic. The chapter in the book actually is pretty prescriptive. It has a lot of steps and some exercises and some things you can do to improve your life. But the main thing I want to say about it is, I love my brothers and sisters in the personal development world, but there can be a certain amount of oppressive positivity, a little bit of toxic optimism. And while I'm all for keeping a positive mental attitude, of course, I also noticed that pessimists make money. The grouchy people find the love of their life. You don't actually have to be Little Mary Sunshine in order to succeed. So grumpy magic says you can make magic in your life even when you're in a bad mood, you're not feeling well, the hot flashes are killing you, that person's driving you crazy, you don't have all the resources you want, you're not feeling great about it. That's okay. Go ahead and make magic anyway. You can do it.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Just the name, Grumpy Magic.
Grumpy
Yes.
magic.
So another thing you talked about, I think we mentioned it already, about busy being a narcotic, which is kind of a strong word, but let's talk a little bit more about that in terms of these other things. I don't know if it's linked to spotlight syndrome or what is it, or is it perfectionism? What is narcotic about it?
So busy, for many years, busy was my second favorite narcotic. And what I mean by that is that if I was busy enough, if I was busy going from thing to thing to thing to thing to thing to thing to thing all day long, then the only feeling I had to deal with was tired. I was using busy as a way to distract myself from some relationships in my life that needed work, some inner work that I needed to do, in the same way that we often turn to, other substances to say, like, okay, I'm going to escape for a while and drink this drink or play this video game or, do this thing that I like to do that take my mind. And like all narcotics, a little bit is fine. A lot is not going to work. And that line can come up pretty quick. I also have noticed there is this massive game of busy poker going on. If everybody's, I'm so busy. Oh, really? You think you're so busy? I am so busy. Oh, no, I'm so busy. It's like, okay, drop it. Drop it. Again, there has to be something more interesting. And when you tell me you're busy, all that tells me is you don't know how to control your calendar. So stop saying it. Stop saying you're busy. Stop saying you're overwhelmed. Someone says, "How are you?" You can say, "Deeply fulfilled. Thank you." Somebody says, "How are you?" You can say, "Trying to put 5 pounds of sugar into a 4-pound bag, just like always." You can say, there's all kinds of things you can say without the self busy there's like a self-pity and also a preening in there of like, I'm so needed and busy because everyone needs me because I'm so busy. It's like, drop it. Just drop it.
It's not really helping us.
It's not really helping.
We're going to take a commercial break, and then we're going to come back for our last segment and talk about getting things done and how you can have a fulfilling work-life balance and more joy in your life. Welcome back. We're still talking to Sam Bennett about my new favorite book, The 15-Minute Method, The Surprisingly Simple Art of Getting It Done. We've talked about overwhelm, we've talked about perfectionism, and let's talk about some of the other helpful concepts in your book. You say feeling stuck in life isn't about what you are doing or what you're not doing. So what is it about?
I think it's just about letting our habits get the better of us. We and maybe not being willing to ask ourselves hard questions. But we're pattern seekers. That's what we do, as we find patterns and things. And sometimes we get a little overly attached to our own patterns. So I would love to see 15-minute method become like a worldwide revolution. I want 1 million people every day spending 15 minutes on something that matters to them. And I would love to see it happening in offices. I would love for a business, because I read over and over and over again that somewhere between 70 and 80%, the number I usually see is 77%, of employees are disengaged. That is a very expensive problem, right? Presenteeism. You got people who are there, they're in the office, they're on the Zoom call, but they're not there. They don't care. They're not bringing their best self. They're not bringing their best ideas. So it seems to me, if I were running a business that was bigger than my little tiny business, I would for sure say, "Hey, everybody, from 12 to 12:15, or from 9 to 9:15, or 4 to 4:15, whatever it is, 4:15 to 4:30, that's your 15 minutes. Don't do it not to catch up on your to-do list, not to make your dentist appointment, not to work on this project, but for you to do something that lights you up. And then at the 4:30 meeting, we're going to talk about it. What did you do today?" And now, first of all, I've got 15 minutes to do my thing. And it's only 15 minutes. It's not going to ruin the day. And you're going to do it again tomorrow, and the next day, and the next day, and the next day. And then you're showing up to the meeting and everybody says, "So what'd you do for 15 minutes? Oh, I was working out a new recipe for chocolate chip cookies." "You bake? That's interesting. What were you doing?" "Oh, I was writing a song. I have this song in my head about the flowers of spring, ding, ding, ding." "You write music? I didn't know you wrote music," right? And now we're seeing each other in new ways. We're connecting with each other in new ways. And there's more than one study that shows that when you allow people to remind themselves of the fullness of who they are as human beings, they will be better in the meeting. They'll have better ideas. They'll be more connected. They'll enjoy themselves more. They'll do more innovative thinking. They'll make more unusual connections. I mean, who wouldn't want that? And even if it's, I spent my 15 minutes sitting out in the garden with the sun on my face. I spent 15 minutes staring at a blank piece of paper. Because you know what? 15 minutes of enforced boredom never hurt a person.
True. You'll be happy to know I've already sent copies of the book to my team, and we're going to be talking about it at our retreat.
Oh, I can't wait. Tell me how it
It's an accounting business. If anybody is overwhelmed, it's accountants, bookkeepers, and tax advisors. So I think I love what you just shared. I think what a great idea and an easy way to implement it. So You also talked about in the book that our desire to do well might be actually what's holding us back at times. So how does that work?
Yeah, I hear a lot that people are like, oh, I'm a people pleaser, or oh, I get really shy, or I'm really, I'm concerned about, other people's good opinion. That's not a character defect. That is a survival mechanism, right? We are tribal animals. We are designed to live in a group. We cannot survive alone. We know this. And we're a little unusual, I think, in the world of mammals. I think most mammals who are as big as we are usually live in small family groups with a lot of distance between us and the other group. But no, we like to be together. We like to live in apartment buildings together. We like to work together. We like to see each other as much as we may wish everybody would just go away sometimes. We are endlessly fascinated by other human beings. And we want to be perceived to be good. We want to be helpful to the tribe. We want to, do good work and have people like us. And, because again, if they kick us out, we're in big trouble. And even though we no longer, depend on our survival of in terms of the group the way we did maybe in cave dwelling times, it still feels like it. Our body doesn't know that. So this thing of like, well, they might get mad at me, they might disapprove, they might kick me out, they might laugh at me. That fear of rejection is, again, a survival mechanism. So I want you to give it its due. Don't be like, oh, don't beat yourself up too much about it, because it's a totally natural and normal thing. And again, spotlight syndrome. Nobody's paying attention to you. It's fine. Like, they're not going to notice. And if they do notice, then welcome the feedback. In the theater, we have a phrase, it's called take the note. And it's when you're running a rehearsal or a show and the stage manager says you were a little early on that entrance, or you felt that line, or this needs to be better, or this needs to be better. You do not in that moment say, well, I would have been on time, except so. Take the note. Just take the note. And sometimes we have to say this to each other when everybody's saying how fabulous you are, right? Oh my gosh, you're so great. Oh no, I'm not that great. Oh no, you should see I'm so disoriented. Take the note. You're great. Take the note.
Yeah, excuses can be carried to extreme all the time because we're so busy making them.
Well, and this gesture of like, no, get those compliments away from me. I also see the no, get that money away from me. No. Somebody says, hey, can I pay you to? No, I'll just do it for free. It's okay. I can just show out. No, get that money away from me. I've done it myself. I can't.
Well, and that's a problem for entrepreneurs, not charging enough for their time, not valuing their time enough, maybe even incorporating the 15-minute method a little bit into what they're doing on a daily basis. Some of that has to be money-making activities, right? That you're focusing on that.
Top of the list.
Yeah. So you also shared some tips about having hard conversations, maybe when you're stuck or other things, or maybe even saying yes to things you shouldn't be doing. What are some tips for handling that?
Yeah, I have seen people stay stuck for years just because they didn't want to have a hard conversation. And so here's the phrase that I've been using the last couple of years that has just transformed everything for me. To be able to go to someone, your partner, your boss, your friend, and say, okay, is now an okay time for us to have a conversation that I really wish we didn't have to have? This simple sentence, write it down. Is now an okay time for us to have a conversation I really wish we didn't have to have? Or is now an okay time to talk about something that has previously been undiscussable? Right? And what you're doing is, first of all, asking a legit question. Is now an okay time? Right? So you're not just walking in and going, dump. You're not blindsiding people. You're giving them a little bit of a heads up to say, can we talk about this now? And sometimes they'll say, absolutely, tell me what's on your mind. Or they'll say, oh, can we talk at 4? Say, yeah, sure, 4 is fine. So it gives them a heads up. It lets them know that you're not crazy about this either. You don't want to be talking about this either. And it puts you on the same side, which is the only way anything happens. You and me together on the same side. You and me, person behind the airline flight desk, together trying to get me to Sacramento, you and me together. When it's you against them, you're going to lose every time. That's never going to go well. Even if you win, you lose, right? But if we say, look, you and I want the same thing. We want a harmonious relationship. We want a successful business. We want an open and honest means of communication. How can we do that? And certainly in marriage, the whole thing with intimate partnerships is to be a team and to be able to say, okay, it's you and me against the fact that the living room is a mess. It's you and me against the fact that your schedule's completely out of control. You and me against the fact that your mother's coming and we haven't had sex and the living room's a mess. And like, best practices is to take these things one at a time, but stay aligned with the person that you're talking to. Don't make them your enemy, make them your ally. And again, if it's uncomfortable conversation, you don't have to be mad about it, but you can let them know that it's serious.
And, I can think of many applications of that, whether it's your employees, your friends, your team, the customers. There's so many ways. And I hope people did make note about that sentence. We're going to end up soon. I want you to share, what are some things you would hope your readers take away from your book? And then please share with us how people can find you on social media and online.
Yeah, I suspect that most of you listening to this have already started to percolate around like, well, what would I do if I spend 15 minutes on? And gosh, that seems kind of enticing. And I really want to encourage you to see it through. Go ahead and try it. And sometimes I hear people get concerned like, well, what if I sit down for 15 minutes and I don't get up till 3 hours later? Fine. Great. What if, I say I'm going to do 15 minutes every day and then I only do it 3 days? Great. Fine. I'm not your mom. You're not getting graded. It's fine. And those 3 15 minutes of this, that 45 minutes is probably way more time than you spent on it in the past month. Right? So give yourself this opportunity. We're all busy. We're all overwhelmed. We're all perfectionists. We're all trying too many hard, but you've got 15 minutes. Put yourself back on your own list. Honor the truth of who you are. I don't think any of us want to be haunting our own memorial service and overhear people saying, well, he was always excruciatingly well behaved and never disappointed anyone. She had incredibly clean tile grout. That person always kept their email box at 0. Like, that's not what we want to hear them saying. We want to hear them saying that person got the juice out of this entire orange. That person lived, that person shared, that person showed up for life.
And so how can they find you to get more of your wisdom?
You can find me at therealsambennett.com. And then I'm on the socials, all the socials as The Real Sam Bennett. And my team keeps threatening to make the fake Sam Bennett.
Thank you. So just summing up, we've talked about overwhelm. We've talked about defeating perfectionism. We talked about how our spotlight, we might be thinking critically of ourselves when no one else really notices it. I, for one, am going to keep reading my already earmarked book of the 15 methods, share it with everyone I know, and I hope you will too, because I think it will lead to a fulfilling and joyful work-life balance. Join us again next week at the same time for another exciting episode.
This has been a Now Media Networks feature presentation. All rights reserved.